to welcome future President of the United States.
The revolution is alive and well. It was a real delight to be here, and thank you for this very nice reception. We did have one complaint. They said you guys make too much noise. That's what you're supposed to do at Well, anyway, it is great to be here, and it's really it's very encouraging to find so much enthusiasm. So I am pleased to come and visit. We were up in Reno last night, the day before, and then flew down here this morning. But it was a bit of a surprise to find the enthusiasm, so I'm delighted. I know I haven't gotten here very often, but it's a real pleasure to be here. You know, things and the policies that we've talked about for so long, and the reason we get excited about a free society once again. But I'll start off with foreign policy. That's not too complicated, you know, on what we should do. And foreign policy, sometimes they want us at the debates to talk about foreign policy versus economic policy. Quite frankly, you can't do that. Foreign policy has something to do with our economics. So you have perpetual war, you have perpetual debt. So yeah, we're going to talk about this. If we look to our Constitution and our traditions and some of the advice of the founders, the advice is, and the position we should have is no entangling alliances. What would that be like? You mean you wouldn't be in NATO? Right, we wouldn't be in NATO. Very clearly, and some of you may remember me making this statement, but when they were agitating to go to war in Iraq, you know, that was to get those bad guys that had something to do with 9/11. It just turned out, you know, all the scaremongering turned out to be false. No Al-Qaeda there, and no weapons of mass destruction, and all the lies that they told us, it wasn't true. When we were debating that on the International Relations Committee, it came up, and we were to, you know, just rubber stamp what the president wanted. So I offered an amendment. The amendment was to declare war. And obviously I didn't want the war. And I told him when I offered my amendment, I said, I'm not voting for this amendment. I said, but if you guys want to go to war, you declare the war. And no, they wanted a resolution that says the president has the authority to do whatever he wants. And when I had the audacity to bring up the subject of the Constitution, the chairman of the committee then said, you know, that's an anachronistic part of the Constitution. We don't follow that anymore. That is more or less the attitude in Washington, not only of going to war, but let's say getting the federal government involved in the education of your children. We don't even need a Department of Education. We don't did follow a policy of non-intervention, following the Constitution, only going to war when it was absolutely necessary. What would it be like? Well, that's one thing a president can do on the first day, because the president's in charge of the troops. And believe me, the troops would come home right. people worry about that, and I said, how long will it take to, get them another job? I said, in the meantime, you get them home real fast, and they started spending all their income back here at home. Maybe that might even give them a boost on the economy. Involved in active wars in Afghanistan and Pakistan and Iraq and all these areas that we do know about. But how about all the countries that we don't know about?
Yeah.
And you think they don't tell us any more about what the CIA is doing, they're winning wars, than they do about the Federal Reserve. I say let's find out about the Federal Reserve and the CIA. That means from Japan and Germany and the whole works, and saving a lot of money. But it's also, I think, good politics. I mean, it's good policy, it's morally right, it's constitutionally right, but it's also a good politics in the sense that the American people are sick and tired of 10 years of war and no signs of ending the war. So it's also good politics because it brings people together. It's not only conservative Republicans, not only libertarian Republicans, and not only the independents who have been discussing with politics for a long time, but there are some good, decent progressive. We want bipartisanship in the sense of building allies and bringing people together that don't have to sacrifice their principles, but strongly believe that a different foreign policy and the protection of civil liberties is something that we can bring groups together on. It would also be protection of our liberties at home. It's under the conditions of war that it is so easy for presidents and members of Congress to go and say, well, we're in an emergency, we're at war, so therefore we can undermine your personal privacy and your personal liberties. So there's always this sacrifice that goes along with war. And the best benefit that would come from this is we would be a lot safer if we had. Stop the wars overseas, we need to stop a lot of these wars at home. The wars against the American people and wars against our liberties. The longer we go on with the more abuse we see with the TSA agents at the airports. And I have a simple solution. That's the legislation that I've offered and said that any TSA agent can't do anything that you or I can't do at the airports. Anything more disgusting than watching some of these videos where there's a small girl or an elderly lady or a grown man being groped by somebody at the TSA. At the same time, most people just say, so many of us, we have to travel. What are we going to do about it? If that lasts, if we don't do anything about it in 4 or 5 or 6 years from now, they're every bit as abusive, I think I might become a pessimist. Right now, I'm remaining an optimist. Suspend, but we're going to do away with it. We're going to repeal this notion of that prohibition health. We're going to get rid of the war on drugs. Just remember at the first meeting that Bush held in 2001, a long time before 9/11, that was high on the agenda. It was a discussion of when were they going to go into Iraq. So much that 9/11 caused these, it gave them their excuse to do the many things that had been planned. And this is what the people have to understand. If we scare the people and preach night and day, and the media confirms and the government keeps preaching that we have to go over there in order to make ourselves safe and argue the case. To me, it's absurd. I don't know how people can believe it. That the only reason they came here is because you're free and you have a little bit of wealth. And that's the reason that they belong. I mean, this is preposterous. Attitude is changing. Because if we don't change that attitude, it'll be very difficult to change our foreign policy. Some things have to be done over a period of time. But what they're doing now, they've had us in this recession, depression now for 4 years, if not much longer, because our economy has been going downhill for 10 years, since the year 2000. So it will take some time, but so far they will not allow the correction to happen. You know, when the Federal Reserve and Congress does things to cause things to go out of whack and cause malinvestment and too much debt, you have to liquidate it. You got to correct it. You don't buy the bad debt from the people who've been ripping us off and dumping the debt onto the people who lose their jobs or lose their houses. Well, I'll tell you what, this system they've had today didn't provide very many houses for the poor people. They're the ones who are losing it. Matter of fact, a lot of people in the middle class are losing their houses as well. Right. So the system serves the interests of the powerful and the rich and the banks, too often even foreign banks. A third of these trillions of dollars they were using to bail out the banks and the special interests went overseas. Matter of fact, our Secretary of the Treasury right now is over there trying to wheel and deal on how they're going to further diminish the value of the dollar and bail out Greece and all of Europe. But economic rules and laws are much stronger, and unfortunately, we will have to face up to this. The sooner, the better that we do that. So what should we do to get people energized again? Because the basic principle is, I believe we have a natural right to our life, we have a natural right to our liberty, and you should have an absolute natural right to keep everything you earn. If we give you sound money and get the economy deregulated and don't take an income tax from you, what kind of a sacrifice is that? A lot of people, you mean you won't have an income tax? I mean, how will the government operate? Well, we want it to operate at a much lower level. That's what we want. We have to change the attitude of the people on what they think the role of government ought to be. If they believe that we should be the policemen of the world and believe in the endless entitlement system, then we'll keep marching forward to total bankruptcy and probable greater authoritarianism. But if we want to change it, we really don't have to sacrifice it. Getting your liberty back is not a sacrifice. Signing the statement and saying, this is okay, I don't like this part. It's sort of like there, because the Constitution was written not to restrain you in any way. It was written there to restrain the federal government. Personal liberty and economic liberty are one and the same, and they're based on your right to your life. Businesses and jobs go overseas. Capital leaves us. And there's all the reason in the world to believe that if we can restore that confidence and what a free society is, we can regenerate this idea of creative energy. And then, in a personal sense, and at least this is my personal sense, is that the goal as an individual is to seek virtue and excellence. If you turn that role over to the government can only do that by destroying your liberties. So what we want to do is once again assume responsibilities for ourselves, recognize and understand if you want freedom and prosperity, you argue the case for liberty. That's where I stand. I thank you very much.